Okay, so this is Grady here. I'm making a tutorial on how to use Kaitai in the OPD files. So the first thing you're going to need is the opd.ksy file. It's in the Discord server. And then just whatever OPD file you're going to be editing, you're going to drag it into here and it's going to load it up. When you do that, it's going to show stuff over here in this object tree. And that's the things you want to that's the things it's going to tell you what everything means. So give me just a second. Let me find it. Okay. So this is the directory for the game. I'm going to go to US directory. DLC. I'm going to go into Maria. We're going to show you how Maria's stuff works. So just go along this file path. Get to the CSR files and the OPD. So I dragged the OPD into here. And as you can see, it loads Maria into here. Over here, down here in the object tree, it's going to show you what file it's loading in as the palette. In the file header, it shows you the offset for each section of this. So it's going to show you the palette section. Starts at, where is it? It starts at this bit address right here. So 114. So 114 right here. Yeah, right here. I clicked on the wrong one. But yeah, it'll start at 114. That's how you can tell where each section is going to start at. But if you're worried about making animations and stuff, you don't really need to worry about the palette. That's just so you know which palette the CSR files are using. What you need to be interested in is the graphics, the GFX pages. This is going to tell you, you want to go into the header section. It's going to tell you how many different entries there are for each character. Since Maria has 8 graphics pages. You go down here into the page entry. You can see that each one of the graphics pages is 128 by 128 pixels. And it's going to load in whatever file name it says on here. And then it loads it creates like a whole buffer, which is what the padding thing is. And then the name size variable will show you how many characters it uses to write the name. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 numbers right here. And then the rest of the padding is all that space that you don't use, the name size. So you don't have to worry about that. All you're worried about is which pages are being loaded in. Which, if you know how the files work, it's just all of the CSR files in their folder. So it's going to load all those in for the graphics pages. Then what we need to worry about next is the frames. The frames are what actually matter. So Maria has 124 different frames that are created. Each one of the frames takes you can name them, but the name of the frame really doesn't matter. Each frame has its own hitboxes that can be set up, and it defines how many different parts it uses to create the image for a frame. So let's see. For frame 0, it has no hitboxes and it uses 2 different parts of her frame. It's using graphics page 0, so that's whatever's loaded into GFX page 0. So GFX page entry 0, file name f2p0csr. So if we go back to Maria, 2p0.csr, we can actually open this up in the palette swapper thing that Dr. Mister made. So I'm going to drop that in here. There's Maria. I'm going to also drop her palette in here just so we can see what she looks like. Okay. Another cool thing you can do is you export this as a PNG file. So I'm going to export that, save it here, and then when you go into PaintNet, you can just go ahead and drag and drop that file in there. And then you can kind of use the dimensions on here to figure things out. So if you see in the bottom right down here, it'll show you what pixel you're highlighting. And if you go on the box select tool, when you select an area down here, it'll say how much, it'll say the dimensions of the area you selected. So with that in mind, we're going to go over here back to the animation frame. The first one uses two separate parts at offset 8, 16. I'm sorry, never mind. Ignore that. That's where the origin is. It's 0, 0. So that's going to be the top left corner. And it's going to be 16 by 32 pixels. So it's going to start here, and it's going to go down by 16, or over by 16, down by 32. So that first one uses this. And then it uses the second one, which would start at x16, y0, and it's a 16 by 16 box. So x16, y0, and it's a 16 by 16 box. So it takes this one that we just highlighted before and this one right here and combines them together. Oops, that's the wrong thing. Depending on what the offsets are. So it's going to place this one at 8. It's going to place this one 8 pixels to the right, which is the middle of it, and then at the top of the frame. And then this one's going to be 8 pixels to the right, 16 pixels down, which is the bottom of the sprite. The other things that are worth mentioning in here, there's a palette index. You can change which palette is being used. So by default, it's always set to 0, which is the default palette. But if you change it to 1, it'll change to this. Change to 2, it'll change to this. 3, it'll change to that. 4, it'll change to that. There are some OPD files, like some of the bosses, that have more than 16 colors. And what they do is they have a palette file, and each one of their frames, when they create it, they will use a separate palette for each frame. So you can like set, I don't know, like the first 3 frames in an animation to the normal palette, and then set the 4th frame in an animation to a different palette. So you're not just restricted to using one palette for animation, you can switch that palettes in the middle of the animation and such to give yourself more than 16 colors. The flip bits, if it's set to 1, it will, I haven't tested it, but I'm pretty sure it's the X. It'll flip it on the X-axis. If it's set to 2, it'll flip it on the Y-axis, and then if it's set to 3, it'll flip it on both the X and Y-axis. 0 is just standard. These 3, I have no idea what they are. You don't really need to worry about them because they don't really change on anything. But now that you have the frames, you can close all that. Once you build how many frames does she have? Oh, I clicked the wrong one. Where am I? Okay, once you have all of her 124 frames built, you can use those 124 frames in the animations. So the way it works is make an animation. This is the name of it. Again, the name doesn't matter. You have to define an amount of frames in each one of the animations. So her weight frame, or her weight animation has 28 frames in it. Where is it? And then this is each one of the frames. You have to define them in order. So it's gonna pick a frame index, which is, where's frames? Frame index is gonna be 0 through however many frames. So it's just whatever order you're putting the frames into the animation. Close that. So this one's going to be frame index 0. I'm assuming this is going to be frame 1, frame 2. Just whatever order you want the animation frames to be in. The delay is the delay between each one of the frames. I haven't tested this too much, but I believe the higher the number is, the more delay there is between frames. So you mess around with that. I haven't figured that out 100% yet. X and Y offset, I believe, is it's just going to offset it from the starting point. So you're starting in the top left, it's going to offset it from that point. So if you have like something that's disconnected, like a sword or something, you can offset it to where it needs to be. Always one, don't worry about the rest of these you don't really need to worry about. It's just the index, the delay, and the X and Y offsets. There was one more thing in the frames. I have to find one with a hitbox though. I actually don't know if Maria has any hitboxes. There we go. This one has a hitbox. So if it has a hitbox, you have to define the hitbox in here. So it's going to have one hitbox in two parts. This one has the hitbox data. You click on that, you're going to have one hitbox. And it's going to be on whatever frame this is. So it's going to give an X and a Y position to place the hitbox, and a width and a height to define the dimensions of the hitbox. That's really all the hitboxes are. So another thing about this is these offsets and section sizes and file sizes. If you add or delete any frames or anything in here, you need to update these accordingly. So let's say I went in and, I don't know, deleted this frame right here. It would remove all of this hex from the OPD file, and it's going to update where it's going to update what the total size of the frame section is. So you would have to go and, where is it? You'd have to go and find this frames section right here, and it should give you the selection length. You just have to translate that back into hexadecimal and replace the frame section size with the new number. It's not, you have to actually highlight both of these, because the whole frame section is this combined with this, and I can't highlight both of them. You just add 16 to this one, then it'll equal. Yeah, you just add 16 to it and it'll equal that. So let's say I want to add a new animation. I would add in the animation and then whatever the updated, well, first of all, you have to change the animation count to 48 if you're going to add a new animation. So change that to 48. And then you just go in here after the very last animation, which would be right here. Just go to the very end of the file. I guess you can kind of copy the previous one, just paste it in there. So you'd go in here in the hex file on HXD. Do I have Maria open? No, I don't. OPD right here. So you would go all the way down to the bottom. Go back into this real quick. So it starts at 5060E, 506E, 506E. So I would copy all of this, paste it. It's going to show up red. You can change the name of the animation by just inputting it over here, not on this side. Go back over to Kaitai, whatever. And then see, I'm going to change the frame count to whatever I want it to be. So I'm going to find this variable in there. So 000A, that would be right here, I believe. So you change that to, I don't know, I want this to be 15 frames. So it's going to be 0E, right? Oh, sorry. 0E. It's 14, whatever, F. Here you go. So this animation is going to be 15 frames. So now I'll have to go back to Kaitai. And then I have to define what those 15 frames are. So after the 9th animation frame, which is the very last line, I'm just going to copy that same line. It starts at 007A. Where is it? So I'm going to copy all of this, paste it at the end, and then we're going to update these variables according to what we're going to type in. So, where's Kaitai? So frame index. You're going to pick whatever frame index you want. You just refer back to your frames. You're going to set a delay between each frame, and then you're going to set the X and Y offset. Most of the time, this is just going to stay 0, 0 because you're not really moving the animations around. You do all that, then sorry, my microphone cut off. You do all that, and then once you're done, you're gonna where is it? You're gonna save this file, re-import it back into Kaitai. So just drag it back into here, and it's gonna update all the variables. And then you're gonna want to take the where is it? You're gonna want to take the animation section header You want to take note of the section length and animations. Take note of that. Add those two numbers together, convert it back down to hex, change this right here to the new variable, to the new size. And then you're also going to go into the file over here, right click on it, go to properties, see how many bytes it is, and convert that number down to hexadecimal as well. And then put it over here as the new file size. Do that and it should work. Let me know if you got any questions.